First, I'd like to bring greetings from our president, Mr. Morgan Williams, who is now in Washington after having spent about 2 months here in Ukraine. Since 1995, the U.S.-Ukraine Business Council, or USUBC as we're being abbreviated, has been uniting numerous American companies who invest in Ukraine, who create jobs in Ukraine, anywhere from Fortune 500 companies to small mom-and-pop operations. They all believe in Ukraine. They have been here, some longer, some shorter term, but they all do believe in Ukraine, and they continue doing business here. We, of course, were encouraged by the revolution of dignity, by the change in the government. We were all hoping that the new government will make one of our jobs, which is to help Ukraine become an easier and better place to do business, kind of easier. Well, Ukraine continues to fail to produce as much as it could. There are, of course, very, very good people in the government, in the parliament now. We were very happy to know that some of the representatives of business community actually went into the government, into Verkhovna Rada, into presidential administration. In fact, 2 are here on this panel. We've known them for some time, and there are a lot of other people with whom it's real pleasure to work. Why is there underperformance? Why is the old guard pushing out the new people? Is somebody draining this glass or not? I think I'm going to use an experiment here. We can argue whether it's 30% full or 40 or 50 or 60. If I do something like this, it's even harder to tell. And it's a matter of perception, basically, for people. People need to understand better, and this is what the leaders in both business and in the government and in the parliament in Ukraine should do. They need to explain to people why is there pain during the reform. I'm going to quote the band which almost went to Eurovision instead of Jamala, the Hard Kiss. They have this line, "'Cause rebirth always hurts." And that's what Ukraine is going through right now. It's rebirth. Reform is it's maybe not enough to describe what's really going on. This is probably the way the business sees it in Washington, in New York, in San Francisco, in Seattle. It's probably the final chance for Ukraine to reform itself, to rebirth itself. There is positive trend. We're certainly encouraged by it. To the new government, to the parliament, we just say, keep pouring into that glass. Please do. We want more and more. As you know, business likes things done in the most efficient way. We always demand more. We want Ukraine to be an easier and better place to invest. We, U.S.-Ukraine Business Council, want to be able to American investors who are not that familiar with Ukraine, the glass is really more than half full, but the perception is not there. One of the things that we do is we communicate that there is not war all over Ukraine, that the corruption is there, but then corruption is there in any country. Even in the United States, people get arrested on corruption charges, including at the level of mayors of large cities, governors, and so on and so forth. So what does Ukraine need to do to utilize this last chance? One thing that we think is probably important, we all know about fighting with against corruption, about deregulation. As Mr. Fisher mentioned, the business doesn't like the idea that somebody decides what the business can and can't do with its money, that it earned honestly, we hope honestly. One of the things we communicate to the Ukrainian government, to the National Bank, is that yes, $1.4 billion may leave the country, but if the money doesn't leave the country, the check mark will not be checked by boards of directors, and $3, $5, $10 billion will not come in. Part of the problem is perhaps the kind of Soviet legacy of attitude toward property. During the Holodomor, during the dekulakization, the collective farm formation process, a lot of people who were very effective managers of their own private property, of their own assets, were either shot to death or sent to Siberia, and in general, population was discouraged from doing anything with the property. And then property became kind of everybody's and at the same time nobody's. The best example right now is the reform that's happening in the construction, the building and construction sector, the so-called OSBB reform. A lot of people don't care about their own buildings because, you know, they care about their own apartments, but they don't care about everything else that surrounds them because they don't feel it's theirs. And this is what's needed. Business leaders in Ukraine and political leaders need to, instead of thinking about just their own property, think about their property as part of the overall puzzle of economy of the country, and realize that there are some, using the multi-unit building analogy, common areas of which somebody needs to take care. And so what Ukraine needs, again, is the leaders who understand this concept of private property, who don't want other people's property unless it's in a normal hand-to-hand exchange. There should be also support for entrepreneurship from the government's offices, from the parliament offices, because entrepreneurship was punishable during the Soviet times. We need to change the paradigm on this. And people need to understand that if they fail in business because something didn't work right, the tax administration is not going to kill them for that. They should be able to go bankrupt and then start their own business. Again, it's not a crime to fail in business. Third, the West should continue to support Ukraine, both politically and economically. When business trusts certain people with whom they already, the Western business, when they trust people with whom they already do business, it's good. That needs to be expanded. The business votes with its money, as you know, and there is a lot of money sitting, waiting for the box to be checked off. If the government and the parliament allow this box to be checked, maybe Ukrainians will start thinking about starting their own businesses because they'd see, if the foreigners can do it in this country, why can't we in our own country? So, when it comes to this cooperation between business leaders and political leaders, that's what we would like to have. And then when it comes to other countries, other than the United States, we've been promoting this idea of having councils like us in the capitals of, let's say, 15 or 20 most important trade and investment partners. Let these councils become the leaders for Ukraine outside of Ukraine. Thank you.